Hello everyone, this is Minicoder coming back to you to give you a new tutorial in the series on ASP.NET MVC. Last we talked, we kind of went over the an ASP.NET MVC template, how you create them in Visual Studio, and we made a new solution called Employee Directory, and then we made three projects. One is the Employee Directory client, which will house our actual MVC application, and then we have two class libraries, one data and one services. Data will hold our repository type information and anything that talks to any framework, and the services, if we bring up our document here, that shows the Visio. Where's that guy? Right here. The data will be over in here, and the services library will be holding services and probably the converter as well. We're not going to deal with any utility classes or anything like that. We're going to try to keep it simple. Today, we're just going to give a very quick introduction. Probably going to keep this to a 10-minute video of the view model, the controller, and the view. Now, just before I go any further, I just want to explain something really quick. MVC is an acronym for Model View Controller. A lot of people like to call these models. I tend to call them view models because they are a representation of what the view is going to model after. And I tend to use, as you'll see over here, models as a synonymously with any framework's entities. It's all based on what you're used to. Some people get really antsy and anal about it. I personally don't. However, you're used to using it. Just know that the nomenclature that you use, map it to mine in your head. Okay. Today we are going to focus on the view model, the controller, and the view. Just a basic top high level. Of what goes on there. And I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but the data will resolve. The data class library will house all the repository and the entities, and then the service library will hold the services for the servicer box over here, and probably the converter as well. So, with that in mind, we're going to focus on this little area right here today, and only a quick example of how it's going to look. I'm going to try to keep this as close to 10 minutes as I can. So, first we're going to make our view. Actually, you know what? Let's start with a model. So we're going to end up making a new page. So we're going to create the view model first, and then we're going to work our way up. You can do it however you like. Just in this instance, I find it a little easier to work from the back forward. It depends on what you're doing as to whether that makes the most sense for you or not. So let's call this the employee. Okay, so we'll call it an employee. Actually, you know what? Let's call it the employee view model. So let's call it the employee VM. I'm not usually big on the abbreviations, but to make things a little simpler, we are going to do that. So if you didn't know, there's a shortcut or a snippet for Visual Studio to make a public property. If you do prop, you'll see there's a couple here. You can make a dependency property, which is usually for WPF or MVVM. There's another dependency property, full property, which will give you the backing private and the public. We're just going to do public property. So if you tab after typing that, it'll give you the default. We will use an integer, so we'll call this the employee ID. Okay, and let's do a string, and that'll be employee name, and let's do property. Actually, you know what? This is kind of redundant, so let's do ID, and we'll do name. And then we'll do, let's see, I'm going to keep strings for right now, so let's do title. I'm not going to do any mapping between manager or anything like that yet. Okay, so we got string, title, name. Alright, so we got that. Now we're going to go to the controller. So we'll open up the home controller. As I explained last time, there is a base controller and abstract controller that all other controllers inherit from, and then you have these methods here that link to your view but based on a name. And we'll go over that with routing later on. So I know this probably doesn't make 100% sense, but just want to go through the motions and then we'll go over how this all maps together. So what we're going to do, what's the easiest thing to do is you right click on the controller folder, do add, and then you do new controller. The reason you do new controllers is going to wire all that stuff up for you. There's web API stuff here you'll keep away from. You can map your MVC controllers right with the views using any framework. I do not recommend doing this because then you map yourself right to the entity. I don't like doing that. This is why you have the view models. So I stay away from that. You can make it have read and write actions so that you can, already you have your methods for CRUD operations. I always choose empty because I never know what I'm going to do. Now you want to keep this name. You see how it's only default is only highlighted, and then you have controller here. You have to use the you don't have to, but to keep everything the way you routing is supposed to work, you want to use this controller with a capital C as the end of your controller name. And you'll see this more when we do the routing stuff. But the end result is it does basically a string split. If you know, it splits off between from here to the right. It sees, oh, okay, this is capital C lowercase ONTROLLER, and that means that it's a control of type controller. So split everything to the left, and that's the name of your controller, the name of your view, the name of your view folder. So we'll call this right now, and this can always be changed later, employee controller. So now it's scaffolding. It's not really scaffolding any much. So what it did right now is it made an employee controller. It inherited from the base class controller, and then it made this little method for you here. Now, there's two things it did here. I'm going to zip these up here. So it returned an empty view, which is fine, and it's looking for type action result, which a view result is. It inherits from action result, and the index method. You don't have to use index, but every folder, you'll notice it made an employee folder as well. So it strips off the left-hand side of the controller, and that's how it finds the folder. Most things have an index. You don't have to. I would recommend doing it for consistency. That way everybody knows that uses your code knows exactly where your page begins at index. Just like in the old school HTML pages, actually the way it still is too. You have index.html or index.html depending on your preference. Same thing here, you're going to have an index.cshtml, which is just telling you that it's going to be a razor syntactical compiled HTML. And at the end of the day, it'll be an HTML. So what's neat here is once you add the view, you can tell it to go to view and it'll go right to it. Right now it won't do anything, so you click add view. Now it's going to give you a view name of index, which is you want to keep it that way. You can tell it, hey model, use some kind of create edit for that model. We're not going to do that right now. We'll leave it empty. We're not going to create a partial because I haven't gone over partials yet. And if you leave it blank, then it goes to view start. So if you choose to use a layout page where you leave it blank, it's going to use that view start right here that we went over the first time. Okay, and then that's how it points to layout.cshtml. So I said as we go along here, things will all start to make sense. So let's add it. So now it made this nice little index.cshtml. And if we go here and we right click here and go to view, now it's going to take you right there. Now we didn't go over view bag yet, and we're already at 9 minutes and 42 seconds, so I'm not going to go over view bag quite yet. In fact, let's just comment that out. And what we're going to do here, just to let you know that we're going where we think we're going. We'll do employee controller. Oops, controller. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to pass in employee VM. We're going to create a new one. Again, if you have not, if you have not done this before, employee VM. I have a basic 101 course that you're more than welcome to use, and that will show you why we're instantiating this. And then we're going to pass in the view model. And you'll notice you get no errors because, like I showed you in the last tutorial, one of the overloads of the view model is of type object. And that's everything inside of the .NET framework, custom or not, inherits from the class object. That's the highest level you can go. So, what we'll do here real quick, so now that we have this up, let me see if we can, without even adding a link here, let's fire her up and see what we can do here. Come on. Okay, so you have your normal page here. Now if you notice, you can go home about, home contact, right? And the reason for that is because if we open this up here, you'll notice there's a home and then there's index.cshtml, right? So if we do, whoops, if we change this right here to employee / index, it should take us right to where we're looking to go. Right here, employee controller. There you go. And you notice there is a footer and there is the header of all these things. We have an add or employee thing there, but you'll notice that they're there. That's because of exactly what we showed before, and that is, whoops, that's the last video. Let's bring this guy up. Okay, so that is the reason those are there, is because since we don't put anything here, because there's a keyword layout and you can say equals and then tell it to use a different layout, it defaults back to this view start which says layout is equal to layout.cshtml, and that's how we get that. And by the way, just like regular, whoops, where are you? There it is. Just like regular websites, if you leave off the index, it'll still take you, just like a normal website would do with normal indexing. And you'll notice that if we do an F12 and look at the, whoops, apparently didn't like that. It's probably binding to the debugger. You'll notice that everything is just typical body, div tag, there's your container, and this is all coming from the header and footer. And if we do an inspect element, there's your H2 employee. So all it's doing is rendering, at the end of the day, it's rendering HTML, which is what we did right here. So next time we'll actually use Razor syntax and actually wire up the view model that we passed in, and we'll give it some properties, give the properties some data, so we can see everything working as we expect. So for now, I hope you enjoyed it. As always, please subscribe if you like the videos and you want to see more. And thumbs up, thumbs down, either is fine with me. Please, if you do thumbs down, if you wouldn't mind giving me some feedback, just so I can know what to change in the future. Alright, so when I see you again we'll go over more details of Razor and view models. But for now, have a great evening, and it is 12/30/2016, so it is almost the end of 2016, so please enjoy your holiday and drive safe. Thank you. Have a great day.